Please welcome Angela James and Charles Halsted, healer and healer.
Well, it was some years ago. Actually, it was the 2nd of July, or maybe it was the 3rd of July. I'm not sure which it was, because it was the middle of the night. I had been discharged from the hospital earlier that evening, and it was the middle of the night. There was nothing to do, so I was taking my medication, and all of a sudden, I gasped for breath. And I gasped and gasped. And I didn't know what was happening. I used my inhaler. I started seeing stars, little twinkling things circling around my head. The more I breathed, the less I could see, I could feel the black shadows coming over me. So I called my daughter, teenage daughter, and I said, I can't breathe, call 911. And she did. And they said, we will send somebody right away. And time just stood still. Maybe it didn't. 5 minutes, we're looking at the clock. 10 minutes. The fire station is 1 mile away from my house. We're listening for the siren. She called again. They said, hang on, we're sending somebody. 15 minutes. She's calling again. She says, we will have somebody there right away. And they said, go stand out in the driveway so you can wave. And they're telling this, and she's relating this to me, and I can feel myself sinking into this black hole. And my daughter, she's running from the driveway into the house, and I'm sitting there just gasping. I don't know how long it was. It might have been 5 minutes. It was more than 10. It was more than 15. Maybe it was 20 when we heard the sirens. Not from the direction of the fire station, but from a spot way over there. And then we heard the others, and they all came. And next thing, there were 8 good-looking hunks in my living room, trying to asking me questions, and I was trying to answer between gasps. And all I could think of at the time, they're all these good-looking young men, and I probably look like shit. Which I probably did. Well, anyway, they put me on a gurney, trundled me out, and somebody said, have you ever been intubated? And I'm like, ugh. And they says, don't worry. And that was the last I knew until, who knows how much longer, a year, a day, a minute, a month. And I found myself in a hospital bed with my hands tied to the railings. Now, that was the night the firemen decided to go to the porn star ball. It was all over the news. I think 6 people got fired, and everything else, but I was in safe hands in the hospital. Now, that wasn't the beginning of my medical journey. It had started before that. And before that it had started, and I had met my then Dr. Charles Halsted. Now he's just Charles. Yeah. So we found out that we had, over the years, in common, we love poetry. So we're actually poets. So we're actually going to read some real poetry for you tonight. I'll let him start.
Okay, the first poem I'm going to read is actually about this woman that's sitting next to me. And it's called The Legacies. You'll notice that there are many differences here, and I'm going to...
I'm better looking.
All right. On a clinic visit, she confided to me her ancestral African slavery, brought below decks in terrible chains to labor in generations in fields of West Indian sugarcane. They were freed in 1833 by British abolition. Coincidentally, when my fourth generation forebear established the family fortune in a textile mill on the Merrimack in New England, where children were paid in pennies to make clothing out of cotton, the slave-dependent southern crop decades before emancipation. Rum was distilled simultaneously from imported West Indian sugarcane to slake the thirst of the ruling class, the New England aristocracy, whose family fortunes were made on the backs of penniless children, on the backs of African slaves toiling in southern cotton fields, in cane fields under West Indian sun. Now she maintains her cultural roots, tells magical tales of African cultures, dances to rhythms of past generations, no longer bound by caste deprivation, by toil in southern cotton fields and cane fields under West Indian sun.
So I got his whole family history, and I kept getting these apologies. You know, my family was involved in the slave trade or in slavery. And finally I said, no apology necessary. Because blue blood oozes red. Conscience slowly spread, festering doubts emerge and slowly spread across the forehead, crossed with confused lines, signage of a curious mind, erudite and unsatisfied with historical timelines. Red blood flows freely beneath black skin, impatiently pulsating for release from misguided reliefs of superiority of race, privilege of caste, defined and delineated from a time long past. No apology necessary. Understand the history. Accept the fact that life is a commodity that sometimes sells, but beneath all skin, tinted in every shade, blood will and always will run red. So while we exchange all this information about family and everything and get all poetic, and I asked Charles, or Dr. Halsted at the time, but whatever got you into writing poetry? And now I'm going to turn him into a storyteller because he's going to tell you.
Okay. Well, first I might say that I worked at the UCD Medical Center for 43 years, and I actually retired 2 years ago. But about 10 years before that, we had a new minister come to our Unitarian church in Davis, and she pulled me aside and she said, I want you to give us a sermon on retirement. We've been giving lay sermons. Well, we didn't have a minister for a year or so, so she knew that I'd done that. And I said, I have no idea about retirement. And she said, well, just grab some men your age, and you're either retired or going to be retired, and just pull a group together and figure it out and read books. And the first book that we read was by a Harvard psychiatrist named George Valent, who did a study of retired blue-collar and white-collar men in Boston through Harvard. And the one thing that came through was retirement is a dangerous time of depression and of chronic alcoholism. Those were very distinct, and it didn't matter what the social economic status was.
We're going to hear a couple of things. We're going to hear how some of his experiences in poetry about being a young doctor, and then we're going to hear one based on a relationship with a patient.
Okay, and I might add that everybody has heard about maybe William Carlos Williams. He's the physician, poet, and so on. But he didn't really write that much about his patients, and surprisingly, well, he was a pediatrician, and I just couldn't relate to what he was saying about his patients, and so I decided that this is a wonderful source of information and relationships and so on. Okay, so I'm going to read you. Everybody knows that doctors go to medical school, and then they go through this sort of hell week or hell year called internship. And the next poem I'm going to read to you is about my internship, which took place in Cleveland, Ohio in 1962. And I just graduated from medical school. Initiation night. The pager beeps the end of my sleep. It's midnight. I'm the one on call. I quickly rise to make my way through basement tunnels where ancient pipes crisscross ceilings. Scuff of gurneys mark the halls. Caged faint bulbs light the way as they have for scores of interns over decades before. I board the creaking lift to examine the newest patient, an alcoholic with liver failure and full DTs, then walk down the hallway, enter each half-open door. Most of my patients sleep with their disorders. The eyes of the others reveal their fears. A homeless guy with frostbitten feet seeks to survive the frozen northeastern winter. An aging hooker with acute PID has nowhere else to spend the night. A grizzled old man with pneumonia breathes fast, then shallow, coughs up putrid secretions that tell me that his death is near. The remaining sick suffer other diseases, each one requiring my full attention. The duty nurse, who's twice my age, asks which orders I'd like to change. I write down what seems best for each one's survival through the night. At 6 a.m., a glimmer of sun shines through the belching factory smoke of our city in its aging decay. As the nurse prepares to leave her station, her thanks say, I've become part of the healing profession. Now, I got another one right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
You gotta wait.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so
But we're on a timer here, remember?
okay, so this is about another of my patients, much more current. And this is all anonymous, so I'm not going to mention any names. It's called Redemption. I'm high on crack and going 80. Black rainy nights, oncoming lights. Backseat guy shouts out, "Look out, too late." I cannot breathe, my chest come tight. Pain cuts my guts, knives through to my back. Ambulance screams, tears through the night. ER doc crowd me, I'm under attack. Up to the OR, all's black, nothing's right. My guts are torn, useless, they cut them out. My fractured back will never be straight. Condemned from now on to be fed by IV. From gangbanger to cripple, that's now my fate. My hospital rooms filled with darkness, despair. Deaths everywhere, in hallways, in air. My past come back, soon I must die. When an angel's chaplain appears at my side, she speaks of redemption and sin's retribution. Forgiveness of self's the final solution. There's a way forward, of that I'm now certain. I can pray to God, I need no permission. I did not cheat death, I'm here for a reason. My body's been broken, but my soul's been restored. I'm reconnected to forces unseen. I'm in spirit's realm, I've been redeemed.
And I think that really sums up doctor-patient relationship, to be able to do something like that. But even as a physician, sometimes you get sick, and you have to have somebody else to look after you. And sometimes you get the cooties and other such stuff. Sometimes you get shingles.
Okay. I'm not going to, unless you want to do it, how many people have had shingles? But you don't have to raise your hand. A lot of people know what it's like. Okay. And I got news for you. It's can be recurrent too. So this is more of a personal poem. My case of shingles. A black cat leaps without warning, claws fully drawn, ready to rip the skin off my back, render it red and swollen. The relentless demon draws its claws along my naked flesh. I'm bare and helpless on the sheet. Each open sore turns into ooze. Ceaseless claws dig deeply to the core of my hopeless mind. A helpless bird within its grasp, I'm being slowly torn to death. A carrion crow lands on my back, pecks sharply into every welt. It's found a half-dead rabbit, jerks out its entrails, piece by piece. A centipede scurries right to left across my raw and bleeding back. Tiny feet tease open every scab that seeks in vain to form. They draw blood from my hide, suck out my soul, squeeze joy from my day. Why don't they just turn their attacks on another prey? Just leave me alone to revel in the cool autumn breeze.
And I've had shingles, so I know about the black cat. Yeah, but since you're doing very well
To survive, right?
Yeah. So let's tell us a little bit more about your dead people.
All right. Everybody knows or should know that the first day of medical school is it's a big it's a turning point.
Wait. No. We don't need to hear that. Tell us about your dead body poetically.
Grandma's corpse.
Yes.
16 shroud-covered corpses lay on steel tables, awaiting our first day of medical school. The windows open to the street and the city graveyard beyond, marked with row upon row of granite headstones. When we pulled back the shroud, formaldehyde wafted up from someone's dead grandma or mum. I picked up my scalpel and drew it through the skin of her bloodless chest and abdomen. We each took a turn extending excisions, digging deep into the framework of her former life's functions. Her bloodless heart, a grapefruit, no longer pumped blood. Her lungs, collapsed beach balls, no longer breathed oxygen. We dissected each of 12 cranial nerves, conduits of life senses, their diverse roles learned by mnemonics bequeathed by students long gone. Lifting the veil of abdominal fat revealed her rubbery liver. Can you guys handle all of this? An energy factory silenced by death. The kidneys, small footballs tucked up on each side, no longer made urine. Her guts, former channels for food and waste, extended the length of the table she lay on. Many weeks later, dissection all done, all that remained were scraps of muscle and bone. Our corpse had made her ultimate donation, the bedrock for our medical education. Her remains had earned their final rest in the cemetery across the street, after a spell in the hospital crematorium. Wait a minute, not quite done. This is actually a haibun, which means that there's a three-liner haiku at the end.
Some kind of bun, like a hot cross bun?
I'll write one about you someday.
No, okay.
Dissected human corpse, secrets of life and death, together in the grave.
Exquisitely grand. 8 butter cookies and black velvet cake, topped it off with red seedless grape, apple pie, and cherry pie. I couldn't resist. I had to try. Drank seltzer water, beer, and wine from a bottle wrapped in twine, trying to juice of some exotic fruit from a bottle labeled, "Do not dilute." Those deviled eggs serve their purpose to entice me into this food circus. The fires burn, my stomach churns. This will be my last repast. And that was just a little bit of levity in all this serious medical stuff. But, poetry used for so many things, and sometimes it gets a little personal. So Charles is going to read you a little personal thing about his brother here.
Yeah. I grew up in, actually, initially in New England, on the coast near Gloucester, Mass, or near Gloucester. And so my brother and I were very close. We were 3 years apart. And he died 6 months ago. And I've written several poems about him and our relationship. Now it's called Forgiven. Now you're somewhere in space with the stars, or else on the crests of eternal waves. Barely responsive on your deathbed day, you never heard what I forgot to say. Something about our childhoods together, you 10, me 7, when you stole my brand new Lionel train and traded it with your friend across the fence for a set of English soldiers, later rewarded to me by our referee mother. Somehow fraternal betrayal faded away in the ether of each of us growing up. You never said sorry, I never forgave, and within my deepest memory, I mourned my lost train that was never returned. What can I say today, 70 years later? Shall I assume that in death's penumbra, you can sense my grief, feel my sorrow, my wish to tell you that all childhood intrusions were erased by later times together, when you were always there for me, my big brother?
And when I got the news of the death of the big brother, I was inspired to write. He chased the monsters from under my bed, held my hand when I was afraid, beat me up when I won the game, beat up the kid who called me names. He grew up, I did the same, we lived different lives, had different aims. All through the years I knew no other. He was always my big brother. Lifetime memories will not fade even though you lie in the grave. For your life I will rejoice and listen for your astral voice. The years have passed, and yes, I know someday we all will have to go. And when from my grief I do recover, I will smile at thoughts of my big brother. To his big brother. But since we are real poets here, yeah, and we write about everything, we even write about fish in the river or the sea. Which one?
Oh, the river.
Fish in the river. Go for it.
Well, I guess I can't quite say this is a real story, but it almost was a real story. Okay, a fishing story.
It's real, yeah.
A fishing story.
Yeah.
Okay.
That big.
My stuttering line came, my river princess. My stuttering line came tight, sure sign that I had hooked a steelhead trout at early dawn, cavorting in roiling water, the spawning ground. I jerked back my rod, set hook through fish lip, lowered the rod tip, loosened the line, and watched as it leapt, careened, somersaulted its way down the stream. With line held tight, I reeled in the fish to my net, carefully walked it up to the shore, now bathed in full sun. 3 feet in length, its belly and sides were coated with white flecks of sperm. I had hooked a wily steelhead trout in the very act of sex. I laid it down upon the ground and went to find the knife that I would use to slice it open and rip out its guts, after bashing its head with a rock to be sure that it was dead. When I turned back to gaze with pride on my prize, I found an upright coquette with rosebud nipples and flowing black hair. I pulled her close to my chest, slid my head down her spine, and felt with surprise a slimy green bottom and tail. With arms outstretched, I lowered her gently back in the stream, gazed sadly by while she glided away as I stood alone on the shore. Released from my embrace, my river princess swam quickly back to rejoin the ongoing orgy of spawn.
So I heard him read that poem to me, and all I could think of was sex.
Well, it was supposed to be. But with a fish?
You know, this is what poetry is supposed to be, evocative, right? And I thought about sex, and I thought, I was getting hot flashes. But then I thought, I have just the thing to go with this. Ooh, I love my men's. Not one man, not two men, but all my men's. I love them in every shape and size. Well, actually, not the ones who are a little too wide. I love them blue-black with tight nappy hair and thighs that cry out to be touched. I love them slight and brown, a little color in the night, enough light to find the spot that gives the ultimate delight. I love them red, white, brown, yellow, sugarhead, nappy dread, spiky red, and even with no hair. I just loves my men's. So we are going to read just a few more poems to show you that we're real poets here. And so, Charles,
Ready?
go ahead, read
Okay.
two of them.
All right, so this is another doctoring poem, and it's called Mouth to Mouth, and it takes place not far from here.
Not the
No, this
sex,
part is separate.
not the sex, not the kissy thing, right?
No, I'm talking geographically. I worked at the.
You see, we are on different. We are on
Well,
different.
this is a different setting, different emotion.
Yeah. I'm still in the fish thing. Yeah.
Oh well, this okay.
I'm still in the sex mood.
Okay. Well, this will bring you out. So every day for 43 years, I commuted from the Med Center home to Davis, back and forth. And this is called Mouth to Mouth. Emerging from the swarming hornet horde, I tear at 70 over the boundary bridge, glance down at the dirty brown river, foresee a straight shot through the traffic to home. I glance at the wetlands on either side. The flock of crows hovers as one, above a marshland of brush and canals. A great egret stands still, a white speck on the shore. There's a cluster of cars on the shoulder. An arm-waving guy flags me down. One of the big rigs has pulled over. The driver lies flat on his back on the ground. My professional oath tells what I must do. Stop at the roadside, preserve life, prevent death. I say the words that announce my profession. The crowd retreats to the shoulder's outside edge.
He loves this poem. Buckets of Blood.
We're going to go back to my training days. I spent 5 years in Baltimore, Maryland, actually. I trained partly at Johns Hopkins, and I worked at the Baltimore City Hospital for another 3 years. And that's where this poem comes from. Bucket of Blood. He arrived in the ER, half dead, stone drunk, from the bucket of blood in Baltimore. Feet frostbitten, arms of a skeleton, shaky hands, tongue red as a beet. His eyeballs were yellow as mustard. Spiderweb veins covered his chest. Gurgling noises rippled through his lungs. Belly swollen, liver a basketball. He babbled on with persons unknown. Blood alcohol was high, outlook was grim. Up on the ward, he puked up bright blood. Emergency scoping found a burst vein. Blood pressure was low, pulse fast and weak, but improved with blood transfusions. No one who knew him appeared. 10 days later, no longer confused, his blood tests improved. Eating well, as good as he would ever be, he was ready to go. His parting words, "Thanks, Doc. Come with me. I'll buy you a drink at the B of B."
So we are going to. This is us. This is Charles. This is I or me. I mean, you know, whoever's the English teacher in here, and joined together in our love of poetry. He was my physician for quite a few years. I was not the best patient sometimes. You know, we would have big drag out, scream out fights in his office, you know, one of those things. But as I said, poetry, words that bring people together, poetry used for various reasons, and poetry used as an art form. So, our tribute to poetry, my tribute to poetry, my poem is a song trilling in the air at night, eager to be heard on the dawn's first light. My poem is words playing in a gentle breeze, then falling in place with structured ease. My poem is a dance, twirling on metered feet, anticipating the riffs of the jazzy offbeat. My poem is a shout of joy, resounding in the air, echoing forever, so that all can share. My poem is a cry of pain as it struggles along, unable to decipher why the words are wrong. My poem is a sigh of unformed verse, creating a trail in the universe. And this is poetry for all of us here. I was very honored to be able to read here with Charles tonight, and I hope we will be able to continue to do this. Thank you so much.
You cannot place her name, her face, from just last week or long ago, when now was mixed with hope and not the past. You do not know if your aching rib was just a recent but forgotten bruise, or return of the cancer cut out long ago. You do not know if your heart will last the night or stop at 3 billion beats since you were born, before the start of the Second World War. But you know that light will appear at 6:30, the freight will rumble at dawn through the fields, the lilacs bloom purple, the redbuds in pink, the magpies will call from your backyard trees, an eastern aroma will arise from your tea, and chances are you'll have 20 more years, although next week's memorial service will be the third of the season.